Keith, thank you, Raymond, for joining us today. My name is Keith Delk, and my pronouns are he, him. I am wearing a red button shirt with a black shirt underneath. I am a white male, sitting on a black computer chair with a white wall and corner in the background. To celebrate Pride Month and Rainbow Book Month, we have a very special guest. Joining us is a remarkable author who is not only deaf but also holds the banner high and proud as a member LGBTQIA+ community. This talented writer has an impressive collection of 30 books, while I, on the other hand, feel like a bookmark in a vast library with only one published paper. Alongside being a skilled writer, our guest is also a filmmaker, playwright, and photographer. Welcome, Raymond Luczak.
Raymond, thank you, Keith. I am sitting in front of a black background, and I'm wearing a black shirt while sitting on a black chair. I am an old white male with a beard. This is my sign name, Raymond Luczak. I look forward to talking with you.
Keith, you have interviewed many people and shared their stories. Today, the tables have turned, and I have the opportunity to interview you. How does that feel?
Raymond, an interview is essentially a more formal term for a conversation or discussion. The deaf community is known for its curiosity and eagerness to learn, so having this interview is wonderful.
Keith, this will be a fluid conversation, and we'll see how it unfolds. You wrote a book titled From Heart into Art. Is this the sign for it?
Raymond, yes, that's the sign for the book From Heart into Art. It's a play on words, combining art and heart.
Keith, so heart contains art within it. You played with metaphors there.
Raymond, yes, it's a pun. The book features numerous interviews with diverse deaf individuals, discussing various forms of art such as cooking, design, cycling, painting, writing, performance, and more. Deaf individuals refuse to limit themselves. Additionally, there are hearing individuals who support these deaf artists. It's an intriguing book that I worked on for a few years while collaborating with SIG News. We conducted monthly interviews. However, SIG News seems to have shut down, so I requested them to provide the gathered information for publication.
Keith, in your book, From Heart into Art, you interviewed deaf and hard of hearing artists and allies. Your interviews start with the person's educational and familial background, which is a shortcut for us deaf readers. So, what's your family and education background?
Raymond, many deaf individuals often struggle to discover their background and where they belong. For instance, some may have grown up oral using spoken language but later learned sign language. They possess different perspectives compared to those who grew up in a deaf family or attended a deaf institution. Sharing this information allows us to engage in code switching depending on the preferred mode of communication. It's important to provide our audience with insights into our backgrounds. I lost my hearing at 9 months old but wasn't aware of it until I was 2.5. I had a high fever caused by double pneumonia. We realized I was deaf because we had 7 children at that time. As kids, we would be playing, and when an adult entered the room and called my name, all the kids would look around to see who was being called. I would follow their gaze to locate the person calling the name. It appeared as if I could hear my name, but I was merely following everyone's attention. One time, my mother took me to the doctor for a physical examination, and she asked why I wasn't speaking. The doctor suggested it might be because I was deaf. When we returned home, my father was giving me a bath. I stood up and looked at the wall while he called my name, but I didn't respond. I got officially tested for my hearing loss, got outfitted with a hearing aid, and started on speech therapy. I was living in Ironwood, Upper Peninsula, UP.
Keith, that must have been a good place.
Raymond, it depends. I grew up in an area where our doors were never locked, and all the neighbors knew each other. Returning to the point, we discovered a town called Houghton, with a population of less than 5,000 people, located in the northwestern section of the Upper Peninsula.
Keith, perfect hand shape. The H for the Upper Peninsula is shaped like an H.
Raymond, yes, it's just a classifier, not a formal sign. Deaf children stayed with host families during the week and returned to their biological families on weekends. I stayed at a Catholic school for 5 years, and it was the most challenging 5 years of my life. There was no deaf interaction. I became depressed and eventually returned to Houghton for high school. The approach shifted from oral communication to signing exact English, or total communication. At the time, I didn't know the difference between SEE and American Sign Language, ASL. After attending Gallaudet University, I learned ASL and completely abandoned SEE. That's my background.
Keith, how did your parents react to the news of your deafness? How did they respond?
Raymond, I'm not sure how my parents took the news of my hearing loss. We never explicitly discussed it. I believe it was more a matter of acceptance. Parents cannot hide their true feelings from their children. If they claim to love their kids without genuinely meaning it, the children can sense it on an instinctual level. My parents demonstrated their love by learning sign language, ensuring that everyone took turns speaking at the dinner table, and being mindful of the presence of a deaf person. However, there are various reasons why some deaf individuals harbor anger towards their families. They may feel like second or third-class citizens, as hearing people can be self-centered and prioritize their own enjoyment at the expense of excluding deaf individuals. They should know better. In my case, things were slightly different. I lived with my biological family as well as 3 temporary foster families, all of whom were hearing. It made me feel like an orphan, and this transitory living arrangement created a disconnect between myself and them.
Keith, how did you meet your foster family?
Raymond, I didn't choose these families. During the week, I stayed with them because I needed a place to stay. It wasn't my parents' responsibility to search for these families. In Houghton, where I lived, there were no certified interpreters, and the deaf community was small, so there wasn't even a sign for Houghton. The individuals in charge of the program in Houghton were the ones who sought out families for the deaf children in the program. I never met their families, so I'm not exactly sure how they were matched.
Keith, thank you for explaining your upbringing. In your journey becoming an author, your visibility as a deaf and LGBTQIA+ author is incredibly significant. It's truly inspiring to witness how openly you embrace your intersectional identity. I'm curious about how this has influenced your creative process and the unique perspectives that intersectionality brings to your work.
Raymond, embracing my intersectional identity has consistently pushed me to think outside the confines of traditional norms. There is no predefined box for me. When I meet individuals from the LGBTQIA+ community, I encounter a multitude of perspectives and stories. The same holds true for the deaf community. Had I grown up hearing and identified as straight, my perspectives would have been narrow-minded. However, being exposed to different communities has allowed me to appreciate diversity on a deeper level. As a member of both the LGBTQIA+ and deaf communities, my family belongs to the blue-collar working class, and my parents did not finish college. I consider all these aspects to be blessings. I have learned not to underestimate the value of blue-collar families who work diligently to make a living. Being deaf, I understand the importance of various modes of communication beyond spoken language. Deaf individuals are often skilled communicators, surpassing their hearing counterparts. While hearing individuals predominantly rely on speech and writing, I have observed that when I engage with grassroots communities, they are fascinated by the fluidity of American Sign Language. Deaf individuals who attend college place a greater emphasis on written English. I adapt my communication style to accommodate both groups of people. Unfortunately, I don't often witness hearing individuals adjusting their communication styles. On the other hand, individuals who are deaf with a lowercase d and do not know sign language still adapt their word order when signing. When interacting with hearing individuals, I utilize gestures as a form of communication. Interestingly, when I travel abroad, gesturing becomes a language, allowing me to communicate with native speakers. It's unfortunate that America predominantly operates on a monolingual system, as knowing multiple languages fosters adaptability. Deaf individuals recognize this strength and understand how to effectively communicate with a diverse range of people. Additionally, deaf individuals tend to be faster readers compared to their hearing peers, thanks to closed captions. Hearing individuals may struggle to keep up with the pace of reading, whereas deaf individuals naturally follow along.
Keith, the reading speed of deaf individuals is truly remarkable.
Raymond, absolutely, especially when reading captions. You know, train zoom gone.
Keith, train zoom gone is indeed a clever pun. It seems like you've had the opportunity to interact with people from diverse backgrounds. Has this contributed to your creativity and open-mindedness?
Raymond, absolutely. It's not just about meeting people, it's also about learning how to be accepting and embracing them for who they are. We should never look down upon others, as we are all human beings. To me, having empathy and compassion in this world is crucial. Unfortunately, there is a lack of compassion and empathy, especially evident in the current political climate. There's a significant amount of anti-trans sentiment and resistance to their rights, which reflects a lack of compassion. They are unwilling to listen to other perspectives.
Keith, those who hold opposition lack the chance to embrace empathy and understanding by truly getting to know the individuals they stand against. Instead of personally engaging with people, they rely on second-hand sources for information.
Raymond, I hope I'm not mistaken here, but I believe that the term trans is a prefix denoting something beyond or surpassing. It signifies a move beyond traditional gender norms. However, those who oppose transgender rights often confine themselves to rigid categories of male and female. Such boxes do not truly exist. They want to convince you otherwise. Society has been influenced to believe in the strict biological binary, but it is not about the physical attributes but rather the internal perception. For instance, associating masculinity solely with individuals who wear dresses is a flawed notion. Prior to the 1900 seconds, pink was considered a suitable color for boys, while blue was associated with girls. The colors were somehow switched over time. Gender is a social construct defined by society, not by individuals.
Keith, fascinating deep topic. It can be built from the bottom up, rather than having the patriarchal system dictate what the standard should be.
Raymond, the LGBTQIA community challenges social constructs by asserting their independence. When two males are in a partnership, people often inquire about traditional gender roles by asking, who plays the role of the wife and the husband? However, it's important to recognize that household chores like washing dishes are not inherently linked to gender. Such tasks are simply necessary responsibilities. Society tends to favor predefined roles as they provide a sense of control. Despite attempts to exert control, the LGBTQIA community has made significant progress with the achievement of marriage equality. Currently, their focus lies on advocating the rights of the transgender community.
Keith, this leads us to the next question. In your writings, you incorporate diverse voices and experiences. That you share the techniques or storytelling elements you use to ensure characters from different backgrounds are authentic.
Raymond, there are two aspects to this. As an editor, I gather stories and it's important to include opinions I may not personally agree with. That's perfectly fine. My role is to ensure that their opinions are clearly presented. For instance, my collection of deaf LGBTQIA stories in Eyes of Desire, a deaf gay and lesbian reader 1 and 2 includes narratives that I may personally disagree with. But they reflect the upbringing and experiences of those individuals. I am aware of my position and strive to include diverse perspectives. Similarly, in my book QDA, a queer disability anthology which explores queer disability experiences, my audience is not hearing but rather queer and disabled. I ensure that the stories include new narratives that resonate with them. I don't concern myself with the outside gaze, such as the perspective of hearing able-bodied individuals. Their opinions are dismissed. The priority is the queer disabled community. I don't care about how the hearing community views them. They can gaze all they want. The focus is on their perspectives and stories, and my personal opinions are not factored in. It's about prioritizing their voices. The same principle applies to Eyes of Desire. It centers on the experiences of the deaf LGBTQIA community, documenting their stories and validating their concerns, such as access to communication. This all pertains to my role as an editor. As a writer, I approach it with a similar mindset. I set aside my own self, Raymond, and step into the shoes of different communities. When I am not a member of that particular community, I ask a sensitivity reader. I strive to have intentional bias in my storytelling.
Keith, what do you mean by sensitivity readers?
Raymond, a sensitivity reader is someone who provides feedback on representation. For example, if I write a story about a black person, I will consult with a black sensitivity reader to ensure their representation is accurate. I want to avoid showcasing my own white bias. As someone with white privilege, I respect their input and accept their guidance in excluding certain elements from my writing. I aim to avoid misrepresentation.
Keith, so you engage in conversations with diverse individuals and incorporate their stories into your writing.
Raymond, I don't actively interview them. It happens naturally through organic conversations. Some of these conversations may have taken place 20 years ago, and I find inspiration in those experiences and incorporate them into my writing.
Keith, your creativity is built upon the experiences in your life. That's beautiful. That's the essence of art. You embody this process.
Raymond, I do my best to embrace it.
Keith, representation is crucial, and as a LGBTQIA author, you serve as a role model. Role models hold a special place in my heart, and their visibility is important within the deaf community. By being visible and sharing your experiences, you inspire individuals who may not have encountered someone with similar identities and passions. It is crucial for people like you to be seen within the community. As a first-generation student, I had never met someone who shared my passions until my freshman year of college when I enrolled in a DEVIA class focused on deaf art. This course introduced me to accomplished deaf filmmakers and artists, which ignited a fire within me and sparked my passion for design. Could you share a memory where you met or received feedback from a reader who found comfort, inspiration, or feels a sense of belonging through your writing?
Raymond, oddly, I don't see myself as a role model. I simply see myself as who I am, acknowledging my many flaws. I tend to shy away when people label me as such. However, I do have 3 quick stories to share. Once, at a gay bar in the 90 seconds, I encountered a group of deaf individuals engaged in conversation. Among them was a deaf man who approached me, pointing and exclaiming, "You changed my life." I was taken aback and wondered if it was a negative thing. He clarified that he had read my book, Eyes of Desire, a deaf gay and lesbian reader, which focuses on the experiences of the deaf gay and lesbian community. He expressed how my book had inspired him to come out. The book gave him the realization that he wasn't alone. That touched my heart and we hugged. In another instance, a hearing man residing in my area, who was still in the closet at the time, read my first book published in 1993. Through reading it, he discovered his identity and became inspired by my involvement with the deaf-blind community. He is currently retired, and it's ironic that I, as a member of the deaf community, played a part in his process of coming out as a hearing person. He developed a genuine interest in the deaf community, and my book may have contributed to his identity development. It's remarkable how we never truly know the impact we have on people. When we write a book and release it into the world, we often remain unaware of readers' reactions. The book exists out there, but do people like it? Sometimes, only a few individuals come forward to share their experiences.
Heath, it's like throwing the book into the darkness, into the vast ocean.
Raymond, exactly. Another profoundly touching story took place in 2005 during my visit to Nuremberg, Germany. I was accompanied by a Germanic deaf gay man one Saturday morning. He invited me to join him on a drive to the old part of Nuremberg, and we arrived at what seemed like an old department store building. Despite its slightly dilapidated state, he encouraged me to enter. As we stepped inside, we found ourselves in a medium to large-sized room, which turned out to be the gay community center for Nuremberg. Seated in a circle were approximately 10 to 12 deaf individuals engaged in lively conversation. I didn't know Germanic Sign Language, or DGS, as it is challenging to learn. Mastering it requires the ability to articulate Germanic sounds with your mouth, as nearly every sign involves associated mouth movements. However, my friend effortlessly switched between American Sign Language and DGS. I noticed copies of my first published book, Eyes of Desire, a deaf gay and lesbian reader, which was published in 1993, placed on the table in the center of the room. This puzzled me since it had been published a few years prior. The group had not necessarily read the book but had bought copies to prove the existence and presence of the deaf, gay, queer, and LGBTQIA+ community. They wanted to demonstrate that the deaf LGBTQIA+ community is here and valid. This may have been one of the first books in the world specifically created for this community. Witnessing this gesture deeply moved me, and I gladly provided my autograph. They didn't have to purchase the book but chose to do so as a testament to the fact that deaf LGBTQIA+ individuals exist. This experience further solidifies my commitment to impacting people's lives, providing insights, and sharing perspectives in smaller ways, like the ripple effect caused by a single drop in the water.
Teeth. People observing from the shore may not perceive large ripples. Instead, they witness numerous ripples spreading outwards.
Raymond, it's ironic how the controversy surrounding gay marriage initiated discussions and created ripples that reached communities, leading to conversations about the definition and significance of marriage. This, in turn, paved the way for discussions on transgender rights. Similarly, the issue of abortion rights has shown us that it's not a simple matter.
Teeth. Books provide a space where individuals can sit and delve into different perspectives. In today's fast-paced digital age, people often jump to conclusions without engaging in meaningful discourse. Books, on the other hand, allow for reflection and consideration of diverse viewpoints.
Raymond, that depends on whether readers are willing to engage with them in the first place. For instance, my mother passed away a few months ago without ever reading most of my books. There could be two reasons for this. Firstly, she might have been afraid that the books would challenge her existing worldview, so she chose not to read them. You're right, in an ideal world, people would be open to reading books from various communities. First, we need the willingness to sit down and read them. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Books provide an excellent starting point for inner discourse, whether we agree or disagree with their contents. I personally enjoy reading books that present differing opinions from mine. It allows me to maintain my own stance while stretching my thinking and gaining valuable perspectives. It's a positive experience.
Keith, that's precisely why libraries and book clubs are formed. The individuals involved in those groups often possess a curious mindset and a willingness to expand their worldviews. They are open to listening and engaging in discourse, even if they hold different viewpoints. It's crucial to have these discussions with one another, and you contribute to that conversation by sharing diverse worldviews and experiences. Nothing can replace that.
Raymond, speaking of libraries, growing up in an affluent family, I would visit the library every week and bring home stacks of books, devouring them all. However, our town was predominantly Republican. Interestingly, the website for my local public library in Ironwood now offers diverse virtual book clubs. During my recent visit for my mother's funeral, I met with the librarian, who shared that the community wasn't always welcoming to certain groups, so they wanted to address that issue. This highlights the importance of books and the willingness to read them. My favorite librarian when I was young was named Fran Peterson. She had tall hair resembling Marge Simpson's, and their hair was white. Fran never once looked down on people and never judged the books I borrowed, even if they were from different genres or not specifically intended for children. They never told me which books I couldn't read. This earned my utmost respect. Similarly, my speech therapist never looked down on me either. I vividly remember a time when I came across the word erotic in my vocabulary and asked what it meant. They didn't react negatively and simply explained that it involved sex. They never made me feel ashamed or bad for being curious. It's incredibly important not to judge. Curiosity and a desire to learn can bring about positive change in the world.
Keith, I love that. I love that.
Instead of making others feel bad for their questions, we should embrace them and provide answers.
Keith, that's colorful. By creating a safe environment, you give others the opportunity to grow in their own unique ways. We all have the freedom to become whoever we want to be. This is where role models, professionals, and adults play a significant role. They provide the space for learning and growth, just like you experienced with your speech therapist. Many individuals spend anywhere between 1 and 3 hours per week with their speech therapists, and that's a substantial amount of time. These sessions often take place one-on-one in a closed room. When a strong relationship is established, individuals feel comfortable and supported. Many people can have a profound impact on the growth and development of young individuals. Building on that, what message of encouragement would you like to share with those who are on their journeys of self-discovery and creative expression, especially for those who may feel marginalized or unheard?
Raymond, it's important for everyone to connect with a community. There are many deaf kids who have hearing families that do not use sign language or make an effort to include them. Look at the word biological. Bio and logical. Bio represents that they may not be the right family for you. Instead, find your logical family, a group of people who love and support you for who you are. They don't have to be blood related, but they understand and accept you. For example, I attended a party in New York where I shared my experience of growing up deaf in a hearing family with a hearing gay couple. I felt lost and excluded. We call this the dinner table syndrome. Later, another person joined the room, a hearing individual who had never met a deaf person before. Yet, one of the gay couple immediately included me in the conversation by summarizing what the two new people were saying. This was surprising because he had never met a deaf person before, and yet he intuitively understood what I had needed at that moment in the party. That's what I consider being part of, or a member of, a logical family. It's about people who get it, who understand our need for inclusion. They don't need to be experts in the deaf experience. They genuinely understand our innate need to feel included. It brought tears to my eyes because I couldn't help but think why my hearing family couldn't do the same. Oh, right, selfishness.
Keith, it's not easy for people to view themselves as selfish. They often resist that idea.
Raymond L., sorry, but it's a fact.
Keith, the concept of ego is often misunderstood. People think it's about actively showing off or talking about oneself. But ego goes beyond that. It means having a closed worldview, being unwilling to expand one's perspective.
Raymond, that's why I use the word selfish. When things are fun and entertaining for hearing people, they often exclude and neglect the deaf community. That's selfishness.
Keith, they're not sharing the fun and inclusivity.
Raymond, that's why many deaf individuals don't feel a sense of belonging in their hearing families. They deserve equality from the start, not as an afterthought. Parents have a responsibility to teach their siblings how to be inclusive, take turns, and not leave out the deaf family member. They should be comfortable with repeating what's said. My issue is that hearing people have ears, but they don't know how to truly listen. Deaf people have a presence of listening to each person at a time. They take turns to talk and listen. They don't want to go through what they experience with hearing family members. It's not worth it. That's where hearing people can learn a lot from us deaf people, to be present, to think about what's being said. Deaf people are generally comfortable with asking for clarification. That disrupts the sense of fun and entertainment for hearing people.
Keith, that's a significant lesson that hearing people can learn from deaf people: clarification and understanding each person's intent without assuming based on their own biases. This can avoid conflicts of perspective. I rarely receive such clarifications when I communicate with hearing people. I have a deaf accent when I try to speak. But when I text, I never get requests for clarification. It's interesting to see the curiosity and desire to learn.
Raymond, deaf people are willing to listen. When I ask for clarification, I am actively listening. I want to understand. When people don't ask for clarification, it makes me doubt if they're truly listening to me. It's good enough for them. I never get that feeling from deaf people.
Keith, I love it. I can sense a connection between us on various levels. I see that same connection. We share similar experiences growing up, with simultaneous communication and signing exact English. I can feel the connection there.
Raymond, what's interesting is that in the deaf community, I feel like we're often punished for our curiosity.
Keith, I had a teacher.
Raymond, punished for being nosy, yes, but it's more than that, inquiring about what things mean.
Keith, the school I attended told me that I asked a lot of questions, and they loved it.
Raymond, that's wonderful.
Keith, when I got admitted to a master's program in one of my classes, I was very motivated and participated a lot because the program aligned with my values and goals. I asked a lot of questions. I think around the fourth week, the professor took me aside and told me to allow other students to participate more. I respected that and kept it in the back of my mind. It was interesting to navigate an environment where I was asked to tone down and balance my own curiosity.
Raymond, I suspect that was a hearing professor.
Keith, actually, it was a deaf professor.
Raymond, a deaf professor and all deaf students.
Keith, yes.
Raymond, I'm used to that with hearing professors.
Keith, yes, it was an interesting experience. I had to tone down my natural curiosity, even though I wanted to learn, and I learned best through people's stories and experiences rather than books. I appreciate the balance of reading and learning from signing professors. My brain becomes like a sponge when I have signing professors. That is one of the champ experiences about being enrolled in a deaf university. This is a good time to wrap up our conversation. I want to thank you, Raymond, for sharing your incredible journey and insights with us. Your experiences show that you are dedicated to sharing authentic and diverse voices through literature and art. It is inspiring, and the Maryland Deaf Culture Digital Library is honored to have you here with us. In celebration of Rainbow Book Month, we have a saying. Raymond, your books showcase the various colors of the rainbow, which is very fitting for you.
Raymond, thank you for having me. I am honored to be part of this. Books are often undervalued in our world. But they provide a space where people can contemplate and imagine a world different from their own. It's a place where we don't have to work hard to read lips.
Keith, absolutely, yes. I love that phrase. I will use that phrase more often.
Raymond, please do.
Keith, if you want to check Raymond's work, check out Deaf Culture Digital Library's Spotlight on Raymond and read his ebooks through Overdrive at marylandco.org. He also has a website, Raymond Luczak.
.com.
.com. The links are in the description.